There's a shelf in most kitchens folks don't think twice about. A bottle of olive oil, a jar of honey, a bag of lentils gone half forgotten in the back. Plain things, old things. Foods that were feeding people thousands of years before anybody owned a pill bottle. And here's what stayed with me. Some of the longest-lived folks on this earth still eat that same short list. Every single day. Not fancy, not dear. 12 foods you'd find written right into the oldest book ever kept. We're going through all 12 today. One of them is in your cupboard this minute. Researchers in Philadelphia found the peppery kind carries something that behaves an awful lot like the anti-inflammatory pill in your medicine cabinet. One is a humble bean most people boil without a second thought. In a study that followed older folks across 4 countries, it came out as the single strongest food tied to who lived longest. And one grows underground, smells up the whole kitchen, and has been studied for doing quietly what some blood pressure tablets are asked to do. I'll say this plain, and I'll say it more than once before we're done. None of this replaces your doctor. I spent a good many years as a nurse. I'm not here to prescribe. I'm here to show you what the research notes and what I've watched with my own 2 eyes, out in my own garden. These foods won't hand you an extra 10 years. Nothing does that on its own. But the people who live long and live well tend to keep them close, day after day, season after season. So pour yourself something warm. We'll start with the oil, the one nearly everyone buys, and most folks store completely wrong. Let's begin. Let's start with the oil. Extra virgin olive oil, pressed from a fruit that shows up all through the old texts. The branch carried back to the ark, the oil for the lamps, the oil poured out as a blessing. Here's the part most folks miss. Reach for a good peppery bottle, the kind that catches a little at the back of your throat when you taste it. That sting isn't a flaw. That sting is the whole point. Back around 2005, scientists over at a research center in Philadelphia, the Manel folks, if I recall it right, put a name to what causes it. Oleocanthal. A mouthful, I know. Think of it like a tiny doorstop. It gently holds shut the same little switches inside you that a common over-the-counter anti-inflammatory holds shut. Same idea. Milder, slower. And it comes from a fruit. One drizzle won't do a thing on its own, mind you. But studies suggest folks who cook with the real stuff, day in and day out, tend to carry less of that low, smoldering kind of inflammation. The sort that builds up quiet, like rust creeping on a garden gate. I think about that every autumn, watching the light go thin over the beds. A body wears the same way a good tool does, slow, from the inside, long before you ever feel it. And what you put on your plate, day after plain day, is quietly voting one way or the other. There's a stretch of coast down in southern Italy and Greece where folks live long and easy, and the good oil sits on near every table. That's no proof on its own, but it's a thread worth pulling. Cheap, over-filtered oil loses most of it. So does oil gone old and tired. The bitterness fades, and the good fades right along with it. Buy fresh, buy peppery, store it in the dark. On to the bean I promised you, the lentil. It's the oldest supper in the book, the very stew Jacob traded for in Genesis. A pot of lentils. That's it. And I'll tell you, folks walk right past them in the store. Here's what changed my mind years ago. A group of researchers followed hundreds of older people in Japan, in Sweden, in Greece, in Australia, for years, just watching what they ate and how they fared. All those different kitchens, all those different lives. And out of every food on every table, one came out on top as the strongest thing linked to a longer life. Not fish, not oil, legumes, the old daily bean. They put a number on it. For every small extra spoonful of beans folks ate in a day, the study saw the risk of dying in that stretch drop by around 7 or 8%. I want to be careful and honest here. That's a study watching people, not a promise. It can't prove the bean did the trick all by itself. But the thread runs through every long-lived corner of the world I've read about. Beans on the table, every day. I started keeping a pot going after I read all that. Not because a paper told me to. I'd fed enough people over the years to trust my own eyes, but because it lined up with what I'd already seen. The folks who came through in good shape late in life, more often than not, ate plain and ate beans. Every culture's got its own version. Dal in one place, a bowl of brown lentils in another. Seems to me the Lord scattered the same good sense across 100 different kitchens. They're gentle food, fiber to keep you regular, a steady kind of plant protein that doesn't spike you, iron, and they cost about a nickel a bowl, a blessing, hiding in plain sight. Barley next, the grain of the poor. The old books called it. The loaves in the boy's basket that fed the crowd, those were barley loaves. Not wheat, barley. And it holds a quiet trick. Barley's packed with a soft, sticky kind of fiber. When it meets the warm water in your pot, it turns to a gentle gel. Picture a damp sponge moving slow through a pipe. As it passes through you, it grabs hold of some of the cholesterol your body would have soaked back up, and it carries it along and out. And there's more than old kitchen lore behind this one. Our own FDA looked at the evidence and let barley carry a heart health note on the label, a real rarity for a plain grain. The research they leaned on suggests about 3 grams of that fiber a day is enough to nudge cholesterol down over time, roughly what you'd get from a good bowl of barley. I'll tell you where I first paid it real mind. A winter some years back, the damp got into everything, and I hadn't the will to cook much. A pot of barley on the back of the stove was about all I managed, and it carried me clear through. Warm in the belly, easy on the purse, the old grain-fed armies, and it fed the poor. And it did it because it works. Filling without being heavy, steady without spiking you. There's a grace in a food that humble. I like it better than oats, truth be told. Chewier, nuttier, keeps you full clear to lunch. My grandmother, or was it my great-aunt? Well, no matter, used to simmer a pot of it with whatever the garden gave up that week. Cheap, filling, kind to an old body. Garlic, the old workhorse. The Hebrews grumbled for it in the desert. They missed the garlic and the onions of Egypt, it's written, right there in the book of Numbers. Folks have leaned on this little bulb for as long as we've kept records. And here's the piece worth knowing. A whole clove, sitting on your counter, is quiet. Nothing much happening. But the moment you crush it or chop it, the flesh gets bruised. 2 things inside it collide, and it makes a sharp little compound. Allicin, it's called. That bite in your nose. That's it being born. Studies suggest garlic, taken steady, may give blood pressure a gentle nudge downward. Several reviews of the research point the same way. A modest drop in folks whose numbers were running high. The thinking is it helps the vessel walls loosen and open, like windows cracked on a warm day, so the blood moves easier. Modest, not medicine, but steady counts. I grow more of it than near anything else out here, tucked in rows along the fence where the deer leave it be. Plant a single clove in the fall, and come summer it's handed you a whole head. Feels like a small wonder every time, though the science of it's plain enough. A blessing that asks so little of you, and it forgives the forgetful gardener. Mine's live through frost, drought, and my own neglect. Here's my one rule, and most people get it wrong. After you crush it, wait. Let it rest on the board 10 minutes before it hits the heat. That pause lets the good compound fully form. Rush it into a hot pan and you cook off the very thing you wanted. And this is a real talk to your doctor one. If you're on blood thinners or already on something for your pressure, garlic can add to the effect. So tell them before you make it a daily habit. The pomegranate. There's a fruit that earns its keep in the old texts. It's stitched onto the robes of the priests. It's carved into the pillars of the temple. When the scouts came back from the promised land, they carried pomegranates. Crack one open and you'll see why folks made a fuss. Hundreds of little ruby jewels, each one holding a bead of tart juice. That deep red color is a signal. It's loaded with the sort of plant compounds, punicalagins, the big ones called, that studies have looked at closely for the heart. Several reviews of the trials suggest that a modest glass of the juice, taken regular, is linked with a small easing of blood pressure. The idea is it helps the lining of your vessels stay relaxed and open so the blood isn't fighting its way through a narrow hose. Small effect. Real, but small. And here's my honest caution. The juice at the store is often more sugar than fruit. So I say eat the seeds themselves when you can. You get the good and the fiber both, without the sugar rush. There's a patience to a pomegranate that I've come to love. You can't rush one open. Try, and you'll wear the juice on your shirt for a week. It asks you to slow down and pay proper attention, which is half of good eating anyway. And the color alone does you good before you've swallowed a thing. That deep red is the plant's own doing, built over a long, warm season. The trials keep circling those red compounds for the heart, gentle as the effect may be. I take it as one more small gift, handed down whole. I keep a bowl of the seeds in the icebox in autumn and spoon them over near everything. A jewel of a thing. Figs, the very first fruit named in the whole of Scripture, if you count the leaves in the garden. And near every farmer in those old stories sat under his own fig tree. I've a soft spot for figs. There's nothing quite like a ripe one, warm off the tree, splitting at the seam. Fresh, they're a summer treat and gone too soon. But dried is where a fig becomes a little pantry of minerals. Drying pulls the water out and leaves everything else behind, packed tight. You get calcium, which most of us past 60 could stand more of, potassium, and a good dose of fiber, seeds and all. That fiber's why my mother, bless her, kept a jar of dried figs by the sink, soaked a few overnight in a cup of water, ate them first thing. It's one of the oldest, gentlest remedies there is for keeping things moving when a body slows down, traditionally used for exactly that, long before anyone sold it in a box. There's a fig tree that came with this place, older than me, by the look of its trunk, and it still throws more fruit than 2 people could ever eat. I give the rest to the birds and the neighbors, and I've not once regretted the trade. The old story set a man under his own fig tree as the very picture of peace, a settled life, enough, and a little to share. I understand that better every year I spend out here. And there's a quiet lesson in how a fig keeps. Fresh, it's fleeting. A few good days, and it's gone. Dried, it holds clear through the lean months, everything in it drawn close and saved. The Creator built a little pantry right into the fruit, a word of care, since they're sweet. Dried figs concentrate the natural sugar too, so a few, not a fistful. Almonds, the first tree to wake up in the Holy Land each year. It blooms while the hills are still cold. That's why, in the story, Aaron's dead staff bloomed almond blossoms overnight, a sign of life coming back. Jacob sent them as a gift too, when he wanted to soften a hard heart. Almonds were treasure, and they're a fine little food for an older body. A small handful, that's about 23 almonds if you're counting, gives you a good dose of the fat that's kind to your heart, a helping of vitamin E for the skin, and a bit of protein and fiber to steady you between meals. Studies watching big groups of people over time have linked a regular handful of nuts with better numbers on the cholesterol front and with living longer overall. Here's a nurse's tip, though. Portion matters. They're rich. A handful is a snack. A whole bowl in front of the television is a different animal. There's something fitting about a tree that dares to bloom while the ground's still hard with cold. The almond doesn't wait for permission. First to wake, every single year, like it trusts the spring is coming, even when there's no sign of it yet. I've always taken a bit of heart from that. And the nut it hands you is honest food. Nothing added, nothing stripped away. The way it grew is the way you eat it. Studies watching folks over the long haul keep tying a steady handful of nuts to better numbers and longer years. Not a cure, a habit. My grandmother soaked hers overnight and slipped the skins off in the morning. Said they sat easier that way. I don't know that the science demands it, but I've kept the habit. Some things you keep just because she did. The onion, the other thing the Hebrews pined for out in that desert, and I understand it. A kitchen without an onion is a sad, quiet place. We treat it as a background player, a thing you chop first and forget, but the onion carries its own quiet gifts, 2 of them worth naming. First, in those papery layers and that purple skin sits a plant compound called quercetin, one of the ones researchers keep circling back to for the heart. Second, and this is the one folks don't hear about, raw onion is full of a special fiber that you don't digest at all. It sails straight past you, down to your gut, where the good little tenants living there feast on it. Feed them well, and they tend to look after you in return. Think of it as leaving supper out for the help. Studies suggest people who eat plenty of these onion and garlic sorts of vegetables tend to carry a bit less risk on the heart side of things. Traditional kitchens the world over lean on them daily. There's wisdom in that. I'll admit the onion never gets its due. It does the quiet work at the bottom of the pot and lets the fancier things take the credit. Reminds me of a good many folks I've known. And that fiber trick is the part I wish more people understood. Those little tenants down in your gut, feed them the right rough scraps, and they earn their keep, tending to things you'll never see. Give them nothing but soft white food, and they thin right out. The researchers are still sorting the fine details, careful as they ought to be. But the old kitchens kept the onion daily long before anyone counted up the reasons. Same rule as the garlic, by the way. Chop it and let it breathe a few minutes before it meets the pan. The grape. Well, the vine is everywhere in those old pages. Planted the moment the floodwaters dropped, pressed into wine for the table, held up as the very picture of a life well tended. It's the dark ones you want, that dusty bloom on a purple grape, and the skin underneath it. That's where the good hides. A compound in there, resveratrol's the name, has had researchers curious for years for what it might do for the heart and for aging itself. I'll be straight with you here, plainer than most will. The studies on that compound are mostly in dishes and in mice, at doses far past what a bowl of grapes could give you. So I don't want you thinking a handful of grapes is medicine. It isn't. But dark grapes, skins and all, are still a fine sweet thing full of water and plant color, and eating the whole fruit beats any pill promising the same. The vine's the plant those old writers reached for whenever they meant to speak of a life gone right, rooted deep, pruned hard, bearing fruit in its season. I've kept a couple of vines along the south fence for years, and I'll tell you, they teach you patience whether you want the lesson or not. And that's the honest shape of it with grapes. No single berry is going to save anybody, but the whole fruit, eaten as it grew, is a plain good thing. Water, color, a touch of natural sweet. I'd take that over a bottle of pills promising the moon. Dry those same grapes and you've got raisins, the traveler's food of the ancient world. David was handed cakes of them for his journey. They keep forever, and they carry iron and potassium in a small sweet package. Just mind the portion for their sugary. A small box, not a bag. Dates. Here's the thing folks don't realize. When the old scriptures speak of a land flowing with milk and honey, a good many scholars reckon that honey was date honey, the thick sweet syrup pressed from these very fruits. The bees came later. A date is nature's candy, plain and simple. But unlike the candy in the checkout aisle, it comes wrapped in its own fiber. So the sweetness arrives slow and steady, instead of all in a rush. It carries potassium, a little iron, a bit of copper, and a couple of them will curb a sweet tooth better than anything from a wrapper. This is the swap I'd have you make if you make just one. Anywhere you'd reach for sugar, reach for a date instead. Blend a few into a paste and you've got a sweetener you can bake with. Stir into oats, spread on toast. Same sweetness, but with the fruit still whole, fiber and all. I didn't grow up on dates. They weren't a thing in an Oregon kitchen when I was small. I came to them late, and I've made up for lost time since. There's a soft medjool that eats like toffee, and I keep a box of them where I used to keep the cookies. That's the whole idea, really. You don't beat a sweet tooth by fighting it. You feed it something better. Trade up. Don't go without. The old lands ran on these long before sugar was ever refined. There's something steadying in eating the way people ate for thousands of years, back when every bite still came wrapped the way it grew. They're rich, mind. 2 or 3 is a serving, not a handful. My little granddaughter calls them God's caramels. She's not wrong. Honey. Real, raw honey. The cloudy kind, straight from the comb, not the clear syrup in the plastic bear. Samson found it in the carcass of a lion. John the Baptist lived on it out in the wild. It runs all through the old stories, always as something good and given. Raw honey isn't just a sweetener. It's one of the oldest remedies folks reached for when their throat went raw or a small scrape needed tending. There's real reason behind the old habit. Honey draws water to itself, which makes it a hard place for the wrong sort of germs to settle. That's why a spoon of it has long been kept by the bedside for a nighttime cough. Studies have looked at that soothing effect for a scratchy throat and found something to the old wives after all. We kept bees for a spell years back, and there's no sugar in the world that tastes like honey pulled from your own hives on a warm afternoon. Every jar tastes a little of wherever the bees have been. The clover, the blackberry, the fireweed up the hill. No two seasons quite the same. That's the thing the plastic bear can't give you. Real honey carries the place it came from, and the studies have found a bit of true comfort in it for a raw throat, gentle and old as the habit is. I take it as one of the kinder gifts, made by something far busier than me. But two honest cautions, and I mean these. One, the clear, heated, filtered honey has had much of the good processed right out. Buy it raw, buy it local if you can. Two, and this one matters most, never, ever give honey to a baby under a year old. Their little insides can't handle it, and it can make them gravely ill. That's not old talk, that's firm. For the rest of us, a spoonful is an old comfort. And we close where every table in that old book began. Bread, but not the pale, fluffy stuff that turns to paste in your hand, the whole grain, spelt, whole wheat, the ancient kinds, ground with the bran and the germ still in them, the way it was done for all those centuries. Here's what the milling did to us. When they learned to strip the grain down to white flour, they threw out the two most nourishing parts and kept the part that spikes you. The old whole loaf keeps the fiber, the good fats, the minerals, all bundled together the way the Creator packed them. Studies that follow big groups of people have tied a diet built on whole grains instead of refined, with living longer and with fewer heart troubles along the way. It's not one magic loaf. It's the daily choice, made over years. There's nothing on this earth quite like the smell of a real loaf coming out of the oven. It fills the whole house and pulls people to the kitchen without a word said. Bread's been doing that since the very beginning. It's the food we break together, the one that shows up at every table in that old book, plain and holy at once. The slow kind rewards a little patience, a long rise, a day or two of waiting, and the grain turns gentle and good. Studies tie a life built on the whole grain, not the stripped white kind, to longer and steadier years. Eat the food closest to how it grew. So read the bag. If the first thing on it isn't a whole grain, put it back. Better yet, seek out a real sourdough made slow. The long rise makes it gentler on the belly and easier to take up. A slice of that, brushed with the peppery olive oil we started with. That's the whole video, right there on a plate. Now, before you go, let's set the whole basket on the table together. Olive oil, lentils, barley, garlic, pomegranate, figs, almonds, onions, grapes, dates, honey, and good whole bread. Not one of them is a cure. Not one of them will hand you a single extra day all on its own. I'd never tell you different. But taken together, day after day, they're the same plain foods that have carried folks, long-lived, clear-eyed folks, for thousands of years. There's a quiet kind of wisdom in that, worth trusting. Start with one. That's my advice. Don't try to change your whole kitchen by Sunday. Pick the one that spoke to you and make it a habit first. And keep your doctor in the loop, especially with the garlic and the pomegranate if you take anything for your pressure or your blood. These foods work alongside good care, not instead of it. Here's my garden fence question for you, and I read every answer. Of these 12, which one already lives in your kitchen, and which one are you going to add this week? Tell me down below. If a neighbor of yours could use a gentler, cheaper way to eat, pass this along to them. And if you'd like to sit with me on the next one, subscribe, and I'll see you in the garden. Thank you for spending your morning with me. Stay well, take care of that body you were given, and may the Lord keep you healthy. God bless.